Hi, this is Zena Harris.
And I'm Mark Rabin.
Welcome to the tie-in. Hey, Mark. Nice
Hey,
to see
Zena.
ya.
Yeah, looking forward to our chat today with Amy Morrison.
I know. Executive Director of the Music Sustainability Alliance and kind of titan in the industry. So, excited to chat with her. I know music is near and dear to
hmm
your heart. It's kind of how you got into this. What are you thinking about this interview?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that when I started Portable Electric in 2015, I was like, man, these gas generators are annoying the hell out of me. And I always had this sort of running joke that a DJ was also basically a gas jockey. So yeah, because if you're running the decks like and creating music, you need sound, lights, power for everything, and you literally have a generator right behind you. And I was like, you know what? We can power sound and lights all day long with clean energy and batteries and solar. And so that's what started it. And we started powering events and festivals. And um, it's gone since, look where we are today, right? We're powering major global stages now with batteries and also to a lesser extent hydrogen generators as well at some point or in hybrid systems.
Yeah. I think it's just, as we've been doing these interviews and talking with people who are actually out there doing it, it's just, like this is moving quickly, I feel like.
hmm
We talked to Paul the other day, Paul Schuring,
Yeah.
and they're powering the main stage of Coldplay, and then we have Massive Attack and Billie Eilish, like
Yeah.
major stars are starting to like incorporate clean tech. It's so cool.
It's going to happen at an exponential rate. And I think this is the beautiful thing about rock and roll music and is they are setting the pace and they are change makers and culture creators. Um, I think the challenge with film is interesting is a lot of it's just behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
Behind kind of closed sets, closed doors, versus music festivals, events. It's very public facing. And I think now more than ever, there's the momentum and Amy is at the forefront of that. And it sounds, it's like she always has been. And so I think, that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to hearing about is is how she got to where she was, but also, what the industry was like and, where it's going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, she's been doing it for years, a wealth of information. Looking forward to chatting with her.
Yeah.
So
With
let's
some of the
dive in.
biggest bands in the world.
Yeah, cool.
Hello, Amy. Welcome to the tie in. We're excited to chat with you about your rich history in the music industry. Amy is the CEO and co founder of the Music Sustainability Alliance. And in 2017, as part of its Women in Music feature, Billboard magazine named her one of the most powerful executives in the industry. And for over 23 years, she's worked as a senior VP of marketing for Concerts West slash AEG Presents, where she worked with bands like the Rolling Stones, Celine Dion, Paul McCartney, Prince, and many, many others.
Welcome, Amy.
Hello, it's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to talk to you. We've met a couple times in person, and it's been lovely to connect that way. And then also through the Music Sustainability Alliance and the working groups and whatnot that you have going on. So excited to chat. One of the things I read about you, you've been described as a trailblazer in the music industry. So looking forward to diving in and finding out, like unpacking that. What does that mean? What have you been up to? How have you been shifting things? Um, so excited about the chat. One of the things we like to do is kind of start with a bit of an origin story. Like how did you get into the music industry? Where did it all start? And yeah, take us through that.
Oh gosh, okay. Many years ago, I got into the music industry on really the ground level. We much of how the industry, I think, still works, but really back then was you learn from doing and you just start in the field and you learn as you go. So my first job, I was actually friends with the band. I was doing the door for them, and local promoter needed someone to work for them. And my first job was putting up posters on the street and making deli trays for bands and doing the doors at club shows. And it was, I'll date myself a little bit, but the baby bands at that time were Metallica, um, and things like that. So I worked for an independent promoter. It was an incredible, his name was Bill Bass. It was Image Productions. It was in Colorado, Boulder, Colorado. I was a student at University of Colorado, Boulder, studying environmental conservation, which, yes, so studying environmental conservation. But so I worked for a small indie promoter and we did everything, every bit of it, from soup to nuts,
Mhm.
working with the bands. And I just, from there, had my own company for a number of years, and promoted a lot of punk rock shows, at a couple different clubs in Denver. And from that, the first major promoter I worked for was Barry Fay, bringing people together before all the promoters came together, into the Live Nations and AEGs as they are today. There were a lot of indie
Oh, got
promoters.
it. Yeah.
So yeah, so I've been in the live, industry. That was in the mid '80s. I started all of that. Uh, Marketing, was a lot of it. I also, was out on the road with bands. I've done some production work, and after leaving Colorado, I moved to New York, and actually worked on a couple of TV shows. And I remember it's funny talking about, like, what do we do? How do we recycle all the paper? And they all laughed at me.
Yeah. Throw it in the garbage. Mhm.
Yeah,
We
they're
don't
like,
do
what?
that.
There was so much paper. It's all these scripts, like just like so much paper for an award show. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what the heck? Um, yeah, so I've had experience on the road. I actually went out with MC Hammer, on the You Can't Touch This tour,
Wow.
um,
I
which
Little side there, I had MC Hammer pants back in the day. I
you did
loved
not.
it. Oh, I
I
so
love
did. I so
it.
did. Big
That was,
moment for me.
yeah, and I was, in New York, and I worked with, both of the local promoters there, John Scher, which was Metropolitan Entertainment, um, and also Ron Delsner. And that's really, when I started with Delsner's, where I really focused in on marketing, which is where I've spent the majority of my career, but always really grateful for all that production and road experience and the other pieces of the industry, because it all connects, with each other, and knowing which really I think is an interesting, that's the way sustainability is too. So,
Yeah.
and then moved out to LA and had my own company again. I brought my big tour. My one job that I brought with me to LA was Neil Diamond. I was working on the Neil Diamond tours, um, which was so interesting because we did everything. There was not an agent, there wasn't a promoter. We were all really self-contained. Um, and then Actually, just backing up a minute, in when I was working in New York, that's where I met, and I guess this was the '90s, met my co-founder, the MSA co-founder, Mike Martin. So
Okay.
we have
Yeah.
been connected for, you know, 20, 30 years at this, 30 plus years at this point. And he was working on a concert. It was called Ban the Dam, and there was some dam happening up in upstate New York. And it was a project to ban the dam, and it was successful, and it was, a benefit at the Beacon Theater. It was with Bonnie Raitt, Jackson Brown, all the,
Mhm.
folks doing that sort of work, and still are really, but some of the pioneers, in the music industry. Um, yeah, and came out to LA. Had my own business for a number of years, doing, marketing for all sorts of different, different tours. Some of them you mentioned, some, and then the Concerts West AEG team was my main client. And right Concerts West got purchased by Phil Anschutz, the AEG team. And it made sense for me to go there full time. And then that was where I spent the last 23 years from very small company to what it is today. It's quite incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the industry's changed a tremendous amount. And I just want to touch on, it was really interesting to learn that you had the environmental conservation educational background.
Mhm.
Um, and sort of have you always had this sort of environmental angle, or a bit sounds like a little bit more of an activist sort of angle to your approach in your career and through the music industry and also through the marketing and that communication side?
Yeah, before I got into the music business, that's a great question, Mark. Thank you for asking. Before I got into the music business, I did a lot of activism work, everything from circling Rocky Flats to for the plutonium triggers. It was a big thing back then in Colorado. To going out on the Nevada test site to stop a nuclear test.
Wow.
Wow.
It's bold.
Yeah.
We, it was God. It was Yeah, the idea was it was during the test ban treaty when Gorbachev was in office, and the US was still blowing up underground tests. So we had the brilliant idea of somehow we knew maybe that was public, that when the tests were going, and we sent people out in the middle of the night to go and then we say, hey, people are on site, you can't blow up the test. So we had many successful actions of postponing these tests. Um, and I went out and did one of those. So it was pretty spectacular. And then I got into the music business. Also did a bunch of stuff with the Four Corners and the Navajo and Peabody Coal and the Hopis, working to stop that. So I spent a lot of years as an activist in Boulder, and then got into the music business. And my dream was always and vision was to bring the two of them together.
How was the Music Sustainability Alliance born? Like, how did that happen? It sounds like, you've kind of waiting for the opportunity to kind of bring those together. How did it happen?
Mhm. Well, I think um, throughout my career and more and more so at AEG, there were opportunities to within my job and within the structure of how the company was to make impact on sustainability. Right. We all say, we like to say that every job is a climate job, and there is something you can do within your role, even if it has nothing to do, it's
Right.
not titled sustainability. So I kept that alive throughout my career at AEG. And during COVID, I mean, one of the things, Larry, I don't know, Larry Vallon, who was recently passed away, but was influential in the industry. And at that time, and I think, still was at the end of his career, but my senior, we both really cared about sustainability. And we actually, put a pitch together to the powers that be and said, you need a sustainability department at AEG.
Wow.
And from that, they hired their first sustainability person.
Nice.
Um, it was like, great. So, timing's everything, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so that was I guess just laying some groundwork. And then during COVID, the number of us that were fortunate enough to still be working in the live industry, we'd all had certainly we're not full time any longer, but put together a team called Climate Positive Touring, that brought together all the different touring divisions within the company. And then the festival teams also spurred something from that as well. And to look at it from the perspective is what is the promoters can we do? And there's many layers and approvals, and you guys know um, who needs to all the stakeholders involved
Hmm.
and the
Yeah.
decision makers. And at that same time, also, Mike Martin and I have been over the years we've done greening on a couple of tours that had been out on the road, and um, just had this idea that that there was this gap, that there was something missing, that people were always asking us, well, how do you do sustainability, or what's happening, or where do I start? And it was like, well, actually, you could talk to this person because they've done it already, or this one, and let's not reinvent the wheel
Right.
and just share. So the MSA was born from that. And we started really just with monthly calls with people in the industry that cared about sustainability. Um, and it's interesting, people miss those calls. It's something we want to bring back
Yeah.
um, to what we're doing. So that's how we started.
Really kind of grassroots, just kind of, thinking about, what you've been doing over the years and pulling it together and just chatting. I mean,
Mhm.
totally, totally hear you on that. Because yeah, people want to know, people don't know where to go, look, these sorts of things. So having an organization really seems like a good way to pull everything together for sure.
Yeah, and hearing about successes and hearing about challenges.
Mhm.
So that was in its simplest form where we began.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, so thinking back through your work in the industry, and then now kind of, formalizing or galvanizing this focus on sustainability, like I feel like addressing climate change in an industry, and then kind of starting to shift an industry is really complex. So I'm curious, as you've worked in marketing, how have you used your marketing background to help shape how you talk about this or how, you bring people into the conversation? What does that look
Yeah.
like?
And key messaging, how has that changed
Yeah.
over the years?
Yeah, it's interesting, and what's challenging and different for me and exciting about that perspective through the MSAs, it's really B2B. I've spent my whole life or my whole career selling tickets and reaching out to the public. So shifting it to how to reach people in the industry and how to
Hmm.
communicate that to them, and putting that value proposition together. And where we what was really telling was when we did our first summit earlier this year. It feels like last year, but it was earlier this year in February. And um, the power of community and having people in the room and really feeding that piece of what people needed um, in the industry. And so really hearing and listening to what people want, right? It all starts with that conversation, and then figuring out how to feed that. So from that, so engagement was important, and how to
Hmm.
maintain and build engagement. And yeah, build engagement. So from that, we started a webinar series. Um, we started a working group program, which both of you guys are involved in, which is incredible. And it's interesting. It's everyone in the working groups volunteered, raised their hands, and the commitment has been really spectacular. And yeah, so I don't know if I exactly answered your question. Um,
I mean, I expanded a little bit on, in terms of the actual buy-in and messaging from both these large music industry organizations now. I mean, these huge companies. How has that communication and messaging evolved? Because I have to believe that people still wanted to be sustainable when you started, even 20 years ago, but maybe it wasn't the right time, or has the talent or the artists, have they had a voice in making that, in sort of advancing that messaging as well? So it's really around because we talk a lot about messaging and how actually crap we are at at distilling complex
Hmm.
messaging around climate and entertainment and it's just human behavior and how we need to start to shift that messaging. Um, and we're playing with some of that stuff, those key messages.
So internally, it's understanding the economics and who drives the decision making, right?
Hmm.
And putting together like that fans actually care,
Yeah.
right? And that your customer actually does care about it. And there's been some amazing studies out there. Planet Reimagine put together this amazing fan survey across many genres of music, talking about that fans actually do care about it, right? Or and that corporate partners care about it. So it's making those cases is important and challenging, right? Um, the teams that jumped on board first with the MSA were all the vendors and production companies because it's very tangible, right?
Yeah.
A light uses this much energy, a truck puts out this much emissions.
Hmm.
And it was very tangible to them. And they also all want to learn. I think that a lot of the commonality is wanting to learn. Not every company has the ability to have an ESG department and experts within the company. So having and providing a place where these other groups can learn and meet other people that are working on the same, um, working on and learn from each other. And they're all really open to that. So that's who came on board first. Um, Also helping elevate other groups out there doing the work in sustainability around music. Um, there's a challenge with artists and artists. I mean, the real impact, right, is getting the house in order, getting operations to a place that we're moving, right, in the right direction. I think there's often a fear of, well, we don't want to greenwash. I think this is, common across many
Hmm.
industries, right? We don't want to greenwash, but we don't want to be criticized because there are certainly things that we're not going to be able to do. And this idea of and getting that message out, like it's okay to not be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but ultimately, that leads to the artists being able to get the message out to and being able to impact culture on a greater
Yeah.
level, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're all after is this big halo effect. Um,
Hmm.
and there's steps and um, different tactics around each piece of that. Education is a huge piece, and understanding each audience requires different ways to be educated, right? So that's really a marketing thing, right? Like know your audience. Who are
Hmm.
you talking to? What do they need? Taking it from that perspective. So,
Interestingly, I have more experience in the sort of film and TV production world, and one of the things I've noticed as I've been working in music world is that there is just this sense of openness. I mean, I've been doing it, mostly through the MSA and just, connecting with people and that sort of thing there. And maybe that's, the sort of foundation there has lent itself to this openness and knowledge sharing and these sorts of things. But I find that even folks like Show Power who are doing, powering
Yeah.
big stages and whatnot,
And
um,
overdrive.
Overdrive and like folks like that, we've talked to them and they're so open and willing to talk about what they're doing and all that. And it just seems so refreshing. Um, Having a bit of a peek in, I guess. And I'm curious, like, is that just the way of the industry or is that the way of sustainability in the industry? How do you see it?
I think it's the way of sustainability in the industry.
Okay.
It's an issue that I think there's some camaraderie around the people working on it because we do all know we're working towards a common goal. And it within the community um, addressing it, there is I think some of the barriers go away.
Hmm.
the point of the MSA is to bring all these to bring all these stakeholders together, um, to actually work together, and to collaborate and come up with solutions together. So there really is an openness. I mean, of course, there's competition, right?
Sure.
But we're working with um, a production vendor group. I don't want to, we're still sort of sussing it out, but figuring out how together they can go to the industry, whether it's with, talking to all their suppliers, right? And if they all come together with one voice, the impact will be much greater than one or two companies um,
Hmm.
doing it. So, that 1 + 1 = 4 idea. And I think the more we do these things, it's a lot of bottom up. I think a lot of the CEOs invest in departments and put a lot of trust in their departments to, um,
Hmm.
to figure it out and to lead on how to get involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the missing link has been really about being able to power the main stage, right, over the years as well, right? I mean, there's other aspects of it, right? You've got your vendors, you've got your cutlery and boxes for food, and you've got all types of different water bottles, et cetera. But I mean, a lot of the big one that I've seen over the years was, oh yeah, great, we can power this little vendor booth or we can power this little activation, but we can't power the main stage, so we're still stuck with three diesel generators going on behind the scenes that are well oversized, and basically wet stacking. And so now what we're seeing, and like Zena mentioned, I mean, we've had the pleasure of talking with Paul and Show Power and seeing them behind the scenes, and Neil at Overdrive, and there's other vendors out there as well that are starting to do bigger stages. So like that was sort of the last, or the holy grail, or the last bastion that I think was, how do you power a multi-day, large, huge blockbuster event?
Yeah.
And we're getting there.
Yeah.
So, are you seeing other examples of that happening in the industry? I mean, I know, Coldplay, obviously, they're leading voice. You work with Rolling Stones, you work with other groups as well. Are you seeing this starting to become a main topic for promoters and other sort of I'm not even event power guys, because that's going to be maybe they're just a vendor, I guess, but well, not just a vendor, but they're
I
making
think
it happen.
a lot of it's still artist driven. You guys are, but for the audience, there was I mean, what Massive Attack did, that 1.5 that they did over in
Yes.
the
Yeah, yeah,
UK,
yeah. Great
was
example.
an incredible example of what can be done.
Can you describe a little bit about what they did, just so?
To a certain point,
Yeah,
but they involve the city.
yeah,
They involve the transportation system of that was the municipal transportation system. They involved all of the vendors. So it was a collaboration, and the artist and the producers. And it was a collaboration and planning, amongst all those groups to create success.
yeah. Great.
Um, which is what's needed. There are more stakeholders than just their cities are stakeholders, fans are stakeholders, transportation, like I mentioned. There are more stakeholders in this than, and um, the interesting challenge about music, and I think probably in film and TV, but I think even more so in music, is every show's in a different city every night
Hmm.
Yeah,
and in different venues, and there's a lot of venues, so and the municipalities have different, the power that you plug in comes from clean, it comes from dirty, like you don't know that the waste haulers might not even know what compost is, or there's just so many different factors to bring into it. So um it's really incredible when cities lead the way and get involved in it as well, which requires a lot of planning, which is not necessarily the nature
Yeah.
of the business.
Hmm.
Um,
just a quick thought. The first time I heard of a broad sustainability initiative from a touring artist was, I believe, Jack Johnson. right?
Yeah.
When he was like, okay, cool, I want all LED lights or else I'm not playing. I mean,
Yeah.
I think he was the first.
Yeah. No, he really was. Was a pioneer,
Yeah.
and he's still out there doing it. It's really quite incredible. And Mike Martin, my partner, my co-founder, was involved in that with him back in the early days of setting that up. So yes, he absolutely led the way. And now more and more, and it's interesting how they do things. Like you can look at Billie Eilish, who
Mhm.
absolutely runs her operations as green as possible. But she does amazing events. They just did one recently in Atlanta called Overheated.
Hmm.
And that's using her voice, her platform, to educate.
Yeah.
And it was a day long full of panels and inspiration and talking about different things with sustainability. Um, and her fans showed up,
Yeah.
right? So it's taking it out of the arena, off her socials really even, and putting it to the people and
Yeah.
offering something.
It's
Um,
kind of like a shift in the industry, a shift in kind of even the business model to some degree. It's like where you know, we used to be, used to do it a certain way, and now we're starting to, do that and other activations and other, engagement opportunities and whatnot. And it just sounds like this is like she's shifting how we think about what an event is or what a concert is and the sort of ripple effect there.
yeah, and how to use the voice of an artist to impact culture. There's
Yeah.
so many ways to do it.
Hmm.
Some will feel comfortable talking out on social, others will, want to change their operations and shout loud about that. Others won't want to talk about it at all, and maybe they donate money. Um,
Yeah.
it's really interesting, and it's a challenge because there's a real fear, particularly in this day and age, about being canceled.
You can't
Just
talk politics or else you be canceled, right? Or
yeah,
whatever it is, like Tenacious D. So,
It's just a kind of now sustainability has kind of fallen in this sort of culture war category. And that's that's
yeah.
stressful.
yeah, very, very, and back to what you were saying that within the industry, it really does seem to be something that brings people together, and it's not divisive. Whereas out in the world, it is right now.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it is a challenge. So it's back to, some of the work you're doing, Zena, with spec and education is so important at every level, right? From the workforce to how do you educate the CEOs?
Yeah.
Or when you want to go to green power, what are the questions that can already be answered to the decision maker before you even pitch them, right? And that they know what
Yeah.
to do. Or if you want to measure, how do you measure? What's the nomenclature? What are the words? What is it even? What's good and what's bad?
Yeah.
I know, kind of demystifying some of that stuff because,
Yeah,
right, it's like around measurement, I find that, people just know the calculator interface and there's not a lot of awareness about what some of those terms mean or what the units are or what goes on, what's the calculation behind this stuff, so kind of even taking that and I feel like we're talking about messaging just in general, like the this whole topic is complex, climate change and whatnot, and we're asking people to then, think about your carbon footprint and now think about, the type of materials that you're using and all the vendors and how are you going to work together? I can imagine like um, like this is why people are showing up to MSA because they
yeah,
just want to know, like,
yeah,
all right, like, let's break it down, please. So,
yeah. It's so true, and that's really where we kind of where we've landed with the working groups and what our output is going to be. In some ways it feels really elementary and you're like, gosh, we should be past this part. But the truth is we're not. And there does need to be a really not even, for the how-tos, like the what is.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
no, I hear you on that. Um,
we're really excited about some outputs that will come out of the working groups at that level.
mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think just so we touch on that, and so we're looking at presenting some of these outputs at the Music Sustainability Summit. Is that correct? And
Yes,
maybe you could tell us a little bit about that while we're on the topic. That's in LA, February 3rd, 2025.
yes, it is. It is the day after the Grammys. And yeah, it's the day after the Grammys. We bring together stakeholders from across the industry. We had over 300 people registered for our initial summit,
Wow.
which like is insane for a first year event.
Yeah.
Yeah. In
Um,
person too.
yeah, an
Yeah.
in-person event. About 265 showed up, which is,
Yeah.
and it was the day of the atmospheric river that
Oh,
weekend
Oh yeah.
in Los Angeles.
Yep.
So it was just like this crazy, again, really reinforcing that this is the moment for it, and
Yeah.
people are hungry for what it is that's what's happening. So the summit, will really cover, will reflect the community of leaders that is growing throughout the industry, and we're going to offer really peer-to-peer learning opportunities. And we're focusing on business strategy, operations, and comms and engagement. And we're mixing up the first summit was very, we just had wall-to-wall panels from
Yeah.
like 9 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon, and or oh, 5:30. I think we ran a little bit over. And then everybody stayed for the cocktail party. Um, this year we're mixing it up, or next year we're mixing it up a little bit. We're gonna have some main stage. We're going to do some breakout rooms or breakout panels. We're going to do some quick sort of TED style talks, and just have it a little more interactive, a little more variety. Um, and everything from, we're looking at a CEO roundtable, just how fans, we'd like to engage fans more, and
Yeah.
how fans are driving change, and also bring in the Gen Z and the younger
Yeah.
generation who are now in roles of real responsibility and power and impact, and
yeah.
how they see it.
Hmm.
Making way for that new generation and new ideas, which is so important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had a nice chat with Jonah Geschwin, the CEO of Green Disco.
Mm,
And I mean, this a young, bright fella who has got tons of energy and is connecting all the dots. It was a really inspiring
yeah.
conversation with him, and really, yeah, really hopeful conversation, right? It's like there is a much younger generation that is really putting their heart and soul into this, and they're all aligned. I mean, I think that's what's really interesting, how aligned they all are on these topics
Mhm.
versus I look at the sort of older generations and millennial, Gen X, and so on. They're divided. They're divided on these topics, I believe, or they don't care as much, and there's sort of different viewpoints.
Yeah.
Um, but I
Yeah.
think it's the role of the artist to really come in and amplify some of this key messaging, as long as they understand what the key messaging is,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
we don't. This is where I think what I'm hearing and what you said is we're still trying to figure out what it is, right? And what we're doing. So we're not quite fully aligned on what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what those key messages and key takeaways are, so that we could amplify them.
I think many some artists are. I think it's about helping along the others, and even the people around them, as to what how, for example, how to talk about, if they care, how to talk about, what happened in Asheville and in North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
right? In a
Hmm.
way that's authentic, and it all has to be authentic, right? If there's
Yeah.
not an interest or caring, then it's not for them, right? But that there are many that do care, and helping them um, work through how to talk about it, to feel confident about it, and to get the people around them to feel confident about it. And,
Yeah.
that's the PR teams, that's the managers, that's the people that work with them at the record labels. And also, Mark, to what you were saying is these smaller bands and these younger bands as they're growing, have it be part of just how they operate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
different scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you said, the fans do really want this. And then, we asked Jonah point blank, like, having, you know, sustainability practices at the event, like, do the fans notice? And he's like, yeah, absolutely they notice. It improves the whole experience. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's just encouraging too.
Yes, 100%. And there's also, what's interesting, there are other ways to impact culture and fans. I mean, think about reuse. And if reuse is at a festival, if it's at a club, it's at an arena, it's at a sporting event, at a music event, um, that people begin to experience reuse as a way of being, right? There's a company called R Cup that's out there in many, many, many venues and ever growing, that's working really hard to create the reuse infrastructure, um, and that, venues can plug into, but that people can start to even like learn what reuse is. And that's the best way, is learning by doing, right? And
Yes.
seeing like, oh, I'm not throwing this away.
Mhm.
Yeah, 100%. Like, just a little example of this. Last weekend, I live up in Tacoma, Washington. I was at a Tacoma Youth Symphony concert, and I saw the R Cup bins around, and I knew what that was because I work in this space. But I was listening to people in the lobby talking about their cups, and then on the way out the door, they were like, "Oh, is this not a souvenir? Can I not take this home?" And people are like, "No, you gotta drop it in the bin." But just like that is a very small, like, I mean, a lot of people came, yay. But that's just one of like a million type concerts that these sorts of things can happen at. And just that, like, the parents and the fans were talking about it. It just kind of made my heart sing, like, I'm like, look at this in Tacoma.
Do you have to put a
So,
deposit for that? Like I saw it at a folk fest. The
No,
first time I saw it at Calgary Folk Fest, they would take like a $2 or $3 deposit for the plate or whatever it was. So then if you brought it back, you got it back, of course. But
it's evolved since then. I think that was early days model.
mm-hmm.
For it. And then for a while, it was the souvenir cup.
Yep.
But then everyone took them home, so that didn't really serve the purpose. And it's evolved into like a pretty ugly cup, so that you don't want to take it home.
yeah, it's like,
A functional cup that has a little messaging on it. Yeah.
yeah,
So that just illustrates, like, that also does come from the the C level, the C suite, right? And we also think about, the music industry. I mean, the artists are the CEOs of the industry, really, when you get right down to it. And they're all little mini companies. And then, of course, there are the CEOs of the big corporations and those pieces. But the artist has the influence, to impact a lot of this, and not just, um, they can do it in ways like that, right? They want to have reuse. They want to serve plant-based food to all their crew, or they want to, one of their conditions of playing a venue is that you offer plant-based meals
hmm
at concessions, right? That you offer plant-based options. Like, that has a huge impact on culture.
Huge.
yeah,
Huge. And then the hope is, and I think, this has been talked about a bit, but one of the things Billie Eilish did when she played the O2 in London was, it asked for plant-based options in concessions, and it was with Levy restaurants. And from that, they now continue to offer plant-based options, right? So it's stuck,
yeah,
which means people bought it and people liked it. And,
hmm
and so it's really another great example of how to impact culture.
yeah. And that's at a facility level, and then that just carries forward. And then you've got like however many people attended, 80,000, 100,000 people are all now agents for change out there
Yes.
talking about how they experience this thing at a concert. Yeah, similarly, I have a friend of mine runs a venue in British Columbia, and Coldplay was coming there and asked for reusable cups. And they had to retool their whole like venue kind of operation on the wayside to be able to handle this now new process. And because they did that, they now it continues on. So
I love that.
yeah. So, it does make a difference.
Yeah, it really does. And it's such, I feel honored to be able to work in an industry where we can actually touch people that way on so many different levels. That's what makes it really exciting.
Hmm.
Yeah, and as an industry, and this is what why Zena and I do this too, is like we really, really believe that the film and entertainment and live events and sports industries have a real opportunity to be the leaders in this space to show how it's done. Because it's hard to make cement, it's hard to make, and there's major other industrial things that are happening around the world that it's going to be a little bit harder to go completely pollution free. However, we can do this. Like we have this opportunity to lead on technology, to lead on messaging, to lead on sustainability initiatives. Um, and I think it's our duty to do it.
Yeah.
And so now and the work that you're doing at the MSA and that we're all part of is critical to those first steps. But I think maybe just to switch it a little bit here, just what are the biggest challenges that you're still seeing um, in engaging with all types of stakeholders here? Because that's also part of the challenge that we have here. There are a lot of folks that are either stuck in their ways or just offer putting up roadblocks. What are the sort of key challenges that we're facing as an industry?
Good question. I'll go, I think, and we've heard this a lot, um, I think across the board, but facts, education, um, um, you know, demystifying the myths or debunking the myths, I think is an incredible, and I know I said it earlier too, but that and having the materials to do that, right? Having the bandwidth and the like, just looking at it from our perspective, because I think that's a key role for the MSA. So really having the bandwidth and the
Hmm.
staff and the team to be able to put things like that together, or to work with, groups that are doing those things, but to, really, so I think that's one of them. I think there's also a lot of other pressing issues for people. And um, I think if people could bring on more staff that knows about sustainability and also understand this that every job is a climate job and open that up to, I think a key challenge is education. And also budget. Budget always comes up. We don't have the money for it.
Yeah.
So making
Yep.
business cases and starting to show, like it's easy. Everyone says, no, but it's really not more expensive. Well, show me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really show me. And show me how not just that, um, like what's the ripple effect? Where are you saving money elsewhere?
Hmm.
So real business cases, that's one of the struggles we've been, and I keep going, one of the goals of the working groups is to put together some of these business cases and stories and what people have been doing. And there aren't a lot of formal, what you would call business cases put together out there for a lot of this.
For
So I think,
public consumption.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we talked in one of our early conversations, we talked to Ken Deans,
Hmm.
and he seemed to have his business case put together. So maybe he's one to tap
You
to
gotta.
talk through because he said he had to justify everything.
Yeah.
So so
And
it's happening.
it is happening. And I think that it's really interesting to learn from some of the leads, the ESG leads and the sustainability leads at the company, because they would not get their programs done
Yeah.
if not. So, but there's many companies that don't have that.
Mhm.
They don't have those experts within the companies to do those things. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, budget and education.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as one of our questions that we ask everyone is if you were to create a new playbook and guiding principles about sustainability and entertainment, what would be first on your list?
A new playbook, guiding principles and sustainability in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Communication, and that there's open dialogue throughout the company. And that is, so how do you do that, right? I think is
Yeah.
what get to in the playbook.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and, you know, along with the summit, I think it would be incredible to put together um, a really think tank of all the CEOs
Yeah.
together. Also something with, getting artists together to talk to artists and tell
Yeah.
their stories and learn from each other, because they're the creative minds, and them and their teams of
Yeah.
how to solve some of this
Yeah.
as well.
It's
Oh,
quite
but Paul,
powerful.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Paul, we just launched Paul Schurink from Show Power. His interview. He's just the power guy, right? In a way, like he's there to work with the creatives to get what they're doing, right? And so, but sometimes there's a little bit of give and take, of
Mm-hmm.
course. But really, he's not there to tell them how to do their job, right?
Right.
And they're the ones there, but they're working together, right? Because it's
Yeah.
huge production, and so it starts early. And yeah, I really love how he speaks about it. He's so collaborative and open, and I think and communicative. And I really yeah, I really love his messaging. But it sounds like it's similar to what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like something that is so deep, and like if we could start over again in the music
Hmm.
industry,
Right.
planning
Yeah.
ahead of time, just planning from design through
Yeah.
timing, so that you don't have to put something on a plane, you can put it on a ship. Or that
Mm-hmm.
you're thinking through and you're reusing materials that have come from a reuse depot. That maybe lighting systems exist in all the major venues. So you bring along two less trucks.
Yeah.
Um, and still, you can bring a truck full of your fun things and make your show yours. We don't want to take that away. I mean, that's what rock and roll is, and
Yeah.
music, and I mean the show and the glitz and the
Yeah.
all of that. But
So Taylor Swift have 26 trucks traveling along with her or more?
yeah, I
Like,
don't know how many, but yes, I mean, yeah, it's a
Like
lot.
everyone does, like
Yeah.
lots of artists, right? Like this is a thing, you know?
Right. So really rethinking that, and how can the shows still be spectacular?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, rethinking. Like
Hmm.
that's interesting.
I
Um,
like it.
and allows us all to mull a little bit over that one and kind of like what would we do or that kind of thing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um that's how I like to do it. Take some time and really get into it.
Yeah.
Well, Amy, thank you so
Yeah.
much
Thank you.
for the
Yeah.
conversation.
And if people want more info about us, we
Yes.
have a website,
Yeah.
musicsustainability.org. We also have a monthly newsletter, which talks about, news in the industry around sustainability, sharing people's stories, upcoming events that we have. And then of course there's the summit, which is coming up February
Hmm.
3rd here in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Amazing.
Everyone
We'll
go to
be there.
that.
We'll be there.
Yeah, I'm for sure. For sure going to that. We'll send around the website as well with the episode and tag you so we can just, keep this going. But really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk through all this with us.
Well, you guys are amazing. Thank you for having me. It's been really a pleasure. Great conversation.
Yeah. Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Wow. Industry legend right there.
I know. I know. I
Yeah.
love how she described how she got into this in the first place,
Hmm.
how she was, an activist, and then she kind of, just started working the
The door.
door.
Yeah.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
And now
Putting up
she's
posters.
yeah. And now she's, just I feel like, the way she talked, she's always kind of been on that cutting edge, right?
Hmm.
And working with these big bands and whatnot. And so now starting the Music Sustainability Alliance is just, really that next big thing for music, kind of pulling everybody together. Super cool.
Yeah. I had that feeling that she's been there and seen everything,
Yeah,
right? She's so calm and cool. And it's like, oh, yeah, I want to work with these guys and, all these big names. It's like, she's just cool. And I think that that's what we need as well in this industry. Um, we need to be able to drive this, but it has to be cool, right? I
yeah,
think
yeah.
sustainability has to be cool somehow.
Has to be cool. I mean, how much cooler, like rock and roll is like the coolest thing ever. So like when you associate it with that, I think you're golden, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and also the fans. I mean, it's going to be driven by the artists and their fans, and we're seeing that, again, like what Billie Eilish is doing, and what Coldplay's doing, and so and many others. Like we talk about Massive Attack, and many others, Jack Johnson. So it's like we're in this moment where I think the music industry is grabbing this by the bull by the horns and going to go for it, and I support it all the way.
Totally, totally. And if you're interested and you're in the LA area,
Hmm.
do go to the Music Sustainability Alliance Summit.
Yeah. February
That's
3rd.
in February. Yep. Like we're going to be there and
Hmm.
probably lots of different people from the music industry. You know,
Yeah, maybe we'll do a live pod from there.
ooh, we should.
Yeah.
We should ask her
Hmm.
about that.
Yep.
Um, if not, we'll pull you aside on the street. We're not shy. So, um, but yeah, that's a great place to learn more. And if you're on the fringe, do consider going anyway, because there's a lot of crossover here. There's a lot of people at work thinking about this
Hmm.
stuff in music. So
Yeah,
anyway,
and I mean, there was that job ad for Live Nation sustainability coordinator, right? Or whatever it
yeah,
was. Like this is or director. I
yeah,
mean, this is Live Nation. These are huge, huge organizations that are now taking this very seriously. And we're seeing it, even Neil from Overdrive Rocks, like he's powering huge main stages too, right?
yeah.
So it is happening in lots of different corners.
Right. So, folks out there, like, pay attention. I mean, look at these people on LinkedIn, connect with them,
Hmm.
follow them, whatever. Because if you're interested at all in this, it's moving quickly. It's moving
Yep.
quickly. So,
Yep. All right. Well, feel free to follow us on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, and whatever other places where you get your podcasts, and share and like and subscribe.
hello, entertainment industry. Something I've been working on over the past year with partners U.S. Green Building Council California and Aerith Environmental is the development of the Sustainable Production for Entertainment Certification, or SPEC, as we like to call it.
It's the first certification for the entertainment workforce, and it's now live for folks to sign up.
Yeah, go to the U.S. Green Building Council California website at usgbc-ca.org to learn more about it and to register for an upcoming class. This is a great way to up your sustainability game and gain a professional certification. So this is for you. See you in class. Our designer is Aaliyah Kane. Music is by Peter Chapman. Our producer is Colin Miller.